So finally we're at the last one. This is will be the finished product when it's done. I hope you've enjoyed watching the bits so far. A little bit to go with this one. Where we left before was painting, so there's more painting to get done with it. I also, after consulting with the pictures a bit more on the end of it, realised there's another lamp stand. Because I didn't have another aerial, what I actually used was a bit of coat hanger that had plastic coating on it, and I cut it to length and just extended it. This is cutting out the Perspex for the windows. The Perspex is from a box. When I get packaging that's got window faces, I usually just pull the box out, so I've got some flat Perspex to do it with. Glued that in, and away we go. Then there was a wash for the streets and the rocks and the manhole cover. This was a black wash, the recipe of which I got off Geek Gaming Scenics, one of his videos, so it's a good mix, and I made it once and I've used it, haven't run out yet. So put it on liberally, leave it a little bit, and then just dab it off so that it looks natural, stays in the crevices, isn't built up all over. Then another touch up for the grey inside the windows. So this was the bit that I said, once I looked at the windows I could see right through them, so I had to stick the brush in through. I wish that I had painted the inside of this when I started. Glue the downpipe on, get it in place, and it covered up that join. Really fun. And as I also said in the previous video, more filling, more filling, more filling, more filling, then sanding, and then sorting that out. This was the fun part. Got up to the painting the soldiers and the dog. It's pretty standard sort of painting. There's the windows in place, and the painting of the figurines, I just followed the steps that everybody else does on videos and things. So because this is such a long set of videos to get to here, I haven't done a lot of time with painting the soldiers, but I did do a little bit on videoing the dog. So this was the other lamppost that had been in and got knocked off in the process, so I didn't bother putting it back on until now. Glue it in place, touch up the glue lines and things, and there you have it. Trying to figure out where the other one went, it was a lot of referencing the photos of the end of the building to work out, and several minutes of fiddling around, which I have not included in the trying to figure it out. It just was eventually, when I got what I thought was the right spot, glue it in place, and it was done too. So at this point in time, the whole thing was starting to come together for me a bit, and I was getting fairly excited. The dog was many coats, base coats, and then trying to reproduce his colouring over him with adding white to his base colour and putting that down, trying to do things in subtle, adding little bits and doing another bit and making it more of a transition rather than slapping it on. And in the end I was really pleased with the way that the dog came out. The only thing I've painted other than before that are dogs are space wolves, and you don't do the Alsatian sort of markings on them. So he came out pretty good, and there he is with his harness on. This is making the lead for the dog. So now I've got the soldiers were painted, and this is a paper clip. I just straightened it out. Then I used some blue tack and figured out about how far they should be apart. Drilled a hole in the back of the dog and stuck the lead in place so that he was there, and then measured the distance and curved the end over to make a handle for the soldier. I wanted him to be taking the strain of the dog, but not so much that the dog was yanking his arm out of his socket. So it was a lot of fiddling. The whole process of making and bending and remaking and rebending and judging which way, how far back he needed to stand and what was a good position for his hand was about 8 minutes. So apart from even speeding it up, have actually edited some of the videos, and you've just got some transitions rather than sitting here bored out of your brain. So then this was the first time that I actually realised that I think the soldiers were going to be in different places than I had anticipated, and I had to allow for what would happen when the bookends get separated, when they're not a diorama, if they're a bookend, so that it was still interesting. Left to construct was a notice board that's at the end of the wall. I just did the address of the church and the service times and one of the verses that they might use. This is some timber. It's not balsa wood, but it is timber that I just cut thin, again milled from my place, and made up a simple box, put some cardboard in the back of it and glued it together, and then basically painted it so that it was prepped and ready for getting a brown paint stuck on it. The street slopes, so I had to make sure I had a short leg and a long leg, so I gave it a coat of primary base coat and then painted it with a basic, I think it's Bugman's Glow, but it might not be, from the Citadel range, and then did a black wash over the bit of tree. When I was doing the tree, its branch fell off. I didn't bother putting it back on until I'd finished mucking around with it, and then I just glued it back to make the thing. This is a bit of, it was the flowery end of a branch, but they were the right scale to give me a tree, a winter tree, for what would be a good tree. So then a bit of brown paint onto the lead for the dog, because I don't want a silver lead, and it was up to the snow bit. This was the whole point for the bookend originally. The snowy bit was the idea behind it all, so I was quite glad to be doing it finally, and that it came up as well as I thought. So I put some snow on the tree and on the sign, and then I proceeded to put a little bit of glue and stick some snow on the feet of the soldiers and on the bottom of their coats, a little bit on their shoulders, a little bit on their helmets where it would, if it was snowing, it would fall, a little bit on the dog's feet. Bit of glue, bit of snow, brushing it away, bit more glue, bit of snow, brushing it away till I was happy that it was light enough on there to not be a blob and dark enough on there to show up as snow. And then I was putting a bit of snow around the light and the tree and the sign, and had another look at the picture and realised that there was actually a garden bed that's they're in dirt, they're not just onto the cobblestones, and there's a garden bed that comes out from the edge of the building. So after I'd brushed all the snow off, I came back and put some brown dirty, I made of dirt. Here's putting snow on the other side, so doing the wall, doing around the light fitting, doing the top of the light. That was the basic build-up of snow. I had some really black soil and I had some light brown soil that I just mixed together as a blend of what I expected to look like winter dirt. So it's a little bit wet and it's a little bit darker and earthy. Sprinkled it on, dusted it off, touched it up in a couple of places around the sign and the lamppost where I thought it needed extra. Got it where I was happy, and then gave it a squirt with a sealer. Just again, plenty of videos that'll show you how to make the sealer. Squirt it on. I use just a window cleaning bottle, but I always empty it out and run a lot of water through it, otherwise the triggers gum up with the glue when you're doing that sort of thing. So that's it with its dirt, still wet, waiting to dry out. After I'd done all of that, the next step was to put the snow on in a greater degree. So I dried it off and had a bit of a look at the images that I'd got of wintry scenes, and then started to make the snow around. Now on the cobblestones, the streets that I'd seen, it starts to melt in the daylight, and so you've got mushy puddles and not as heavy. So I built it up around the building, but used a brush to thin it out on the ground so that's a little bit more see-through, and then got another dry brush and brushed away so that you saw a bit more of the streets. And this was just back and forth and back and forth. Then I did the roof. Now later, when I do a reveal, spin around, have a look at it, you can have a look at the roof. That join, the mistake that I made on the roof, was nowhere near as obvious after the snow went on it. I then got some liquid water and painted the exposed cobblestones a bit so that they were a little bit more glistening, a little bit more wet looking, and did the same thing on the downpipe a little bit so that it looked like it was a bit more condensation on that. And so that was placing the blokes to make sure that I was still happy with the way they were going before I got to and painted that wall that's beside the building. I decided in the end not to do a sky scene, but to just paint it black and finish it off. But instead of the grey that the ends and the roof and the side is, I went for a black, and so it got painted. And I think it finished off well. Later when you do it, you don't pay much attention. This got to be the fairly exciting bit for me here, finally removing this tape. The process from when that tape went on to the day that I took it off is about 4.5 months. So this has been in my spare time in between working 5 days a week and sometimes 6. And it was a really fun to see the tape come off finally and remember that there was timber edges and bark on the edges of it to make it really spunky looking bookends. Cut the tape off around the black bit. There's a little bit of trimming back and forth. You can see some white lines. I had to go in with the knife and really get under them to try and get rid of the leftover tape and stuff like that. It's all, you know, nothing exciting, just fiddly things that make it better in the end. Glue the guys down finally in the directions that they're going to face, and Bob's your uncle. So here's the final glamour shots of the different bits and pieces, and then there'll be a spin with them as diorama and a spin with them as bookends. Overall, I'm really happy with the way that it finished. When they're bookends, you can see that the soldiers are both facing the front. I was also really glad that I'd gone with not splitting the building right on the corner, but having that extra little corner, because that side, when it's a bookend, still looks quite interesting, even though it hasn't got the doors and the lampposts and the change of direction in the road that the other side has. And I'm really happy with the way that the lead and the soldiers come up. So as you can see, his hand was cut off. It was the other way up to cradle his rifle, but just by adjusting the arms a little bit and cutting his hand off and turning it over, it's come to a good pose. Really pleased with it, and glad with how it turned out. I gave it as a gift to my boss that I work with, whose child's house it was that we were painting to get the idea for the snow. And there's, you know, the colour on the roof came from a tester pot that was used on his children's home. The snow itself was made from the home, the leftover that was from when we sprayed the ceilings. The timber in the bookends is from my own home, and hopefully I have managed to reproduce a church that if he gets back to his hometown in Germany, he will actually be able to go and have a look at in real life. And although the scene is a fictitious, maybe not fictitious, World War II sort of a scene, the whole experience has been really good. I went straight from this, because my dad really liked it, to a Wild West one, and that will be the next thing that I upload. There will be several hours worth of editing for the video from that. This is the roofline bit. You can see that bit that I mucked up there is almost indistinguishable, and in fact if I hadn't told you about it you wouldn't know. So there you go. And you can see the little bits of build up of snow on the downpipe and stuff like that. So yeah, I really hope you've enjoyed watching this, and if you've persisted through all 5 videos till the end, I seriously hope that you enjoyed the process of the creation. I really like creating stuff, and so I don't mind these videos when people do them. I watch the creative ones, so I'm hoping that all of the rest of you that are creative sorts of people will enjoy the process. Anybody that skipped to the end, you've missed nothing except how it happened. This is my really high-tech turntable that I've got. Excuse, there's no fingers being done, that's a robot arm. Wasn't my hand that you saw in the background then. This is really, really high tech. It's cutting edge, state of the art stuff. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. See ya.